FilthyRobot here, just about to start the breakdown of the Baldur Gate 3 classes, and wanted to remind you all that we do not have complete information for this quite yet. A number of these classes are in the game, but only up to level 5 as part of early access, and a number of these classes are not, or subclasses rather, are not yet in the game at all. So the information I'm going to provide to you guys is a little bit of data mine stuff collected on websites, a little bit of my own D&D knowledge going into this, a little bit of previous subclasses, and a little bit of the information released on the games. What this means is some of these things are going to be a little bit inaccurate. Some things that are reported as an action might be a bonus reaction. Some of the things that happen in normal mechanics of D&D may not apply to the Baldur's Gate 3 game. They may have tweaked these engines a little bit. Where I notice these differences or where I can see them, I'm going to try to highlight them. And when I think these are going to have implications on how the character plays, I'm going to mention that. But just a caveat that not all of this information will be exactly accurate because of the sources that we're drawing from. All right, let's take a look at the Baldur's Gate 3 Sorcerer class. One of my recurring favorite classes in D&D. Let's break it down here. No weapon no armor proficiencies, can't use shields. Basically no weapon proficiencies. It can use a dagger or quarterstaff or a light crossbow, no other weapons. A charisma and con saving throw proficiency, which means con is great for casters, allows you concentration checks. So having that inherently cooked into the sorcerer is great. Charisma saving throws are pretty rare. They're good when you roll them, but they don't get rolled very often, kind of deal. And a D6 HP, which is as low as it goes. So they are squishy. They don't get access to any gear, and they have decent saves, but only really the con save that matters too much here. So why do I like them? I like them because of all the things sorcerers do. First of all, they're a sweet class to multi-class with, since your subclass is chosen at 1. Their metamagic at 2 is super flexible. There's a bunch of metamagics, depending on how many they implement in this and which books they're reading out of and whatnot. These can do anything from changing the way you cast spells to, like it might be a stealth spell, it might be an extended range spell, it might be a spell that's harder to resist, it might be a duplicate spell which you clone like some buff on yourself and an ally or 2 allies or this type of thing. Really interesting things you can do with metamagic. The most boring things you can do with it are create sorcery points and create spell slots back and forth, but there's a lot of cool metamagic things, and they're often very, very fun outside of combat. Subtle spell casting where you don't mumble shit or wave your hands around, so therefore the people you're casting it on are unaware, are really good for the like one-off attempts to manipulate people, right? So if you want to who knows, sneak by some NPC or some version of this, you can maybe subtle spell some sort of charm spell or some version of this. I love the things you can do with it in pen and paper creatively. And because charisma is a spellcasting attribute for sorcerers, they also tend to be the face of your party. And since they're a spellcaster, their primary attribute is that spellcasting attribute. They're a primary spellcaster. They don't really care about physical damage. So they don't have to level dex or strength, and they don't care about armor, so they don't really level dex or strength anyways. They tend to be the highest charisma on your team almost the entire playthrough, right? Which means they will be your talker as much as they possibly can. I love sorcerers. They're super, super fun. They are pure spellcasters. The way that works for them is they gain spells on level up, and you can remove a spell you already know on level up to gain 2 new spells. Their spell progression is full caster progression, so 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. for when you get each new tier of spell. And that is the bulk. If you look, there's a bunch of blank levels here, and that's because the bulk of what you're getting is spellcaster progression. Normal ability score improvements, class features at 1 and 6, and metamagic. There are metamagic increases. They're not listed here. I don't remember exactly when they occur, but a couple of these blanks I don't think are actually blanks. But sorcerers are very specialized casters, often with some really cool subclasses that let them do very unique things. I really like them. They're probably my favorite of the caster classes, and I play them a lot. So let's see what subclasses they've given and what we think we might want to do with them. So starting with Wild Magic subclass. I like this Sorcerer subclass. It often isn't worth taking. There's a lot of more interesting ones, but what they've done here seems kind of cool so far, so let's walk through it. You get an ability called Tides of Chaos, where you choose to gain advantage on your next attack, ability check, or saving throw. I believe you can use this as you want. I'm not sure if there is a charge count. It doesn't say anything about that here, and I don't think there is. And what it does is every time you do this, you increase the chances that when you cast a spell of first level or higher, you're going to trigger a wild magic effect. The wild magic effect is a random effect based out of a list of effects, and when you do that, it resets like the triggers for this. This is supposed to be you have the ability to impact fate a little bit, but then fate fucks back with you kind of deal. And let's see what they've added for that. But it's a fun idea, right? It makes for some randomness on outcomes, which isn't always what you're aiming for, but can be a lot of fun, especially when you're role playing that randomness with other players and pen and paper. So anyway, let's see what they do. All right, for the wild magic effect, the following are some of the possible effects. I mean, I wonder if that means there's more out there that we just don't know about, or this changes over time. I'm not sure. That's pretty obscure wording as to what that actually means. But let's go through the ones they do show us. At the start of each turn, trigger a random magical effect. Summon a this is like a little demon imp, right? A mephit. I don't know how to say that. Mephit, who knows? That's hostile to everybody in the vicinity. So a third party enters your fight. Switch positions with a target each time you cast a spell or cantrip. I wonder how that works. Does that mean I choose a target I swap with, or the target has to be the target of my spell or cantrip? That could be really disruptive if it is swapping with only the target of my spell, but that's interesting. Till the end of your turn, you can use a bonus action to teleport up to 9 meters. Interesting, listed in meters. That's a lot better than it looks. I think most of the calculations are in feet. I think one tile is 5 feet. So this is presumably this is 27 feet or whatever. So, quite a big teleport range. Create a dense cloud of fog centered on yourself. The fog heavily obscures and blinds creatures within. Not great, obviously. And centered on yourself. I wonder how big the radius is. Do you screw your party with this? There's some interesting side effects of this, right? Heavily obscured is, I think, untargetable, right? Enemies can't perceive you, so they can't target you. Blind is certainly bad, but if they can't target you, that's interesting too. Each enemy within 9 meters become blurred, which is harder to hit. It doesn't say enemy, it says each creature. So sometimes you just buff your entire team with blur. I wonder how long that lasts for. Just a single round? Who knows? Your spells of level 1 and higher heal all creatures in a 3-meter radius for 1d4 hit points per spell level. Set fire to everyone around the caster for 5 turns. Enhanced weapon with 1d4 force damage. Hits will always deal critical damage. That's an interesting one. It's so rare that you're going to want to use your weapon. I guess if you have your crossbow out and maybe your dex is at 16, sometimes it will be worth it to try to get the guaranteed crit from this. But I don't know how long that lasts for. You're not going to be able to attack on the same turn that you cast a full level spell unless you're meta magicking it. And that seems pretty rare. So that must be a multi-turn effect. Maybe it doesn't reset. I've been assuming that once you got a effect, it would reset, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just... I guess I don't know the duration of when this magic triggers. It's interesting. And the final one is spawn a water puddle around the caster. Man, it's going to be tough to want to take this one without a full list of the effects and some idea of how reliably you can generate advantage or at least not get absolutely destroyed by these effects. But it's kind of interesting. It's going to be a fun one. Advantage on demand for anything you're doing is kind of nice too. It was attack roll, save throw, and what? I wonder what this action is. Is it it just says activate. I think I can activate it on a reaction. So if an enemy spellcaster casts paralyze on me, can I Tides of Chaos advantage saving throw? If I can do that, that's really flexible and powerful. If I can only do it for the next one and I have to activate it on my turn, attack roll ability check is just fine. Attack roll in particular is okay. Maybe this is good with something like Scorching Ray or some sort of attack that's going to require a hit roll starts to be fine with this. But it's really going to depend on the implementation of what you can do with this. You might be willing to risk these things if you cannot demand have like advantage on a saving throw, for example. That kind of stuff is really fun to play with. And I like the randomness and flexibility of a skill like this. So that strikes me inherently as interesting. Whether or not it's good to be determined by these impacts of these spells. And, some of these are like, it doesn't look like positioning will protect you fully. Sometimes it looks like there's point blank negatives, like setting on fire. And sometimes there's point blank positives, like blur. And sometimes there's area of effect, things that may be negative or positive, like the fog cloud, depending on which enemies you're fighting. It's kind of interesting. Maybe you could build a character that like tried to be based around avoiding the negative outcomes of this. Maybe you could figure out some way to get like tremor sense so obscure doesn't bother you, and that same deal, like blur. If you have something that can see through illusion and see through magical darkness or obscuring, then 2 of these effects become not very threatening to you, kind of deal, right? Maybe you're fire immune or something, So I could see it being fun building a character or party trying to really lean into this effect and mitigate the negative outcomes. I don't think I'd want it randomly added to a team because I think it probably is too too variable what it's doing and too unpredictable in its outcome to be great on every team, but I bet you could build something fun with it. I have to see what other options we have to interact with that. It's kind of a cool idea. All right, next one is Draconic Bloodline. All right, what does this one do? Draconic Resilience. Your max HP increases by 1 for each sorcerer level. Okay, so instead of a d6, we got a d6 plus 1, sure. Dragonlight scales cover parts of your skin. When you aren't wearing armor, your base armor class increases by 3. That's interesting. I wonder why it's done that way. That's a lot, 3 AC in this system. So it's interesting to hear that. That's a lot more armor than I remember it as 1 on the pen and paper. At level 1, you have to select 1 Draconic Ancestry among 10 possible outcomes. I wonder what... Okay, so fire is a damage type associated at 6th level, which is pretty late, but not super late. Spells that deal fire damage are more powerful, and you can become resistant to fire damage. You learn Burning Hands. So then we get acid. So it's either fire or acid. Acid gives us grease and additional acid damage at 6th. Lightning gives us lightning and Witch Bolt. I think Witch Bolt is the recastable channel. So you channel it and then you can cast like nukes 10 times. It's pretty efficient. Lightning's okay too. There's a couple lightning spells. We'll have to see what the full spell book looks like for Baldur's Gate 3, which ones they put in, which ones from the various extra expansions are added or not. The resistances are going to be tough to choose. You're probably not going to choose based on a resistance. Basically, you're not going to know which enemies you're fighting until you play the campaign once. You may not even play the campaign more than once. You're probably guessing on the resistances. You're probably picking it for other things. Maybe spell access, but level 6 is pretty late, and these are level 1 spells, right? Burning Hands and Grease and Armor. These are all level 1 spells that I see. So you're not choosing Draconic Ancestry based on the spell because it's just not that exciting. And you're probably not choosing it based on the resistance because you're not going to know. So you're probably choosing it for the damage element, which means you might be able to predict which ones are going to be good anyway, since there are some sorcerer spells that are good and some that aren't, like Fireball and Lightning or Lightning Bolt or quite high damage spells kind of deal, like that kind of thought process maybe. But maybe the utility of a couple of these. I don't remember if you can get Grease as a sorcerer starting. I think you can, but I'm not entirely certain. So some of these spells may be off the... Like is Armor? I thought Armor was a Warlock spell. It may not be a base Sorcerer spell. So in other words, you might be able to get some spells off of the Sorcerer list through these backgrounds that might be interesting too. So maybe you pick these based on a damage. Maybe you pick these based on a utility spell. Probably you're not picking them based on a resistance. What else do we have? So we have Ray of Sickness, Disguise Self, Featherfall, Fog Cloud, Hideous Laughter, and Sleep. All fairly interesting. We get anything else from it? No. And we don't know what the later features are. And I think there's a level 6 feature, right? It says that it improves, but by how much? I don't know how much damage we're adding to it or not, or how much damage we're adding to it, rather. There's no nod about it. Yeah. I generally don't like the Draconic Ancestry subspecs. I don't really find them that impactful. But occasionally I do pick them up when I'm looking for something very specific. Armor class might be that. It's tough to get armor on a sorcerer. I'm not sure how these overlap. Well, we can kind of see it, but it doesn't clearly tell us. For example, some effects are additive and some are replacement effects. If this is like, maybe, for example, we could be a monk and then our wisdom, when we're unarmored, it might be Dex plus 10 plus wisdom, which is monk unarmored, plus 3 because of Draconic armor class. It might not be. It might be a straight replacement effect. It might be 10 plus Dex plus 3 instead of 10 plus Dex plus 3 plus Wisdom. Until we know how these interact, it's tough to imagine. But you might find some fun multi-spec builds where you're taking advantage of the core armor class that comes out of this Draconic resistance stuff, resilience stuff rather. So maybe some interesting stuff to do with sorcerers. We'll have to see. Or rather this subclass. I mean, there's always going to be interesting stuff to do with sorcerers. They're one of the most interesting classes in D&D. So I have to see what the future features are for this too. All right, and the final one, this is not in the game yet. So this is the site predicting based on existing Storm Sorc somewhere else. I'll read through it, but I don't attach a lot of weight to what it's saying here because I don't expect it to be exactly like this in the game. Tempestris magic, however you say this. Starting at the first level, you can use a bonus action on your turn to cause whirling gusts of elemental air to briefly surround you immediately before or after you cast a spell of first level or higher. Doing so allows you to fly up to 10 feet without provoking opportunity attacks. That's a nice disengage effect when you cast spells. It's a bummer that it's limited to spell slots, so you can't do it with cantrips, but still, that's pretty nice. That's a pretty nice ability. Heart of the Storm at 6th level, you gain resistance to lightning and thunder damage. In addition, whenever you start casting a spell first level or higher that deals lightning or thunder damage, stormy magic erupts from you. This eruption causes creatures of your choice you can see within 10 feet to take lightning or thunder damage equal to half your Sorc level. I don't think that's going to be in the game. That seems way too similar to draconic magic, dragon lightning form, or whatever the hell it's called, like lightning ancestry dragons, right? Like it's almost identical to what that's doing. It's an additional damage on your thunder and lightning spells for like that subset. So we'll have to see exactly how they implement it, but I doubt they're going to give us 3 subclasses, one of which is almost entirely eclipsed by a previous subspec of a subclass. Seems very unlikely to me. Anyways, my general take on sorcerers are they're fantastic. I don't see anything in here telling me they won't be. The most interesting of these subspecs to me right now, without more information about spells and the interactions for that, seems to be the wild magic. I don't know exactly how we build a group that most synergizes with that, but it looks like it could be a fun subspec. And I can't wait to see how how the engine that Baldur's Gate 3 has built plays with things like meta magic. If we can really do like combat, like spell casting in non-combat situations, so we can use magic to impact the narrative of the story, it's going to make this so much fun. So I really, really, really hope that that's available to us as in this game, and specifically to the sorcerer class. Anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you soon.